I graduated 5 months ago, so I have a pretty fresh opinion on the schooling system, and you probably always see everybody bashing it and hating on it, and you yourself might have a pretty strong opinion against it, and even I disagree with most things about the schooling system. There are some things that people just don't take into consideration at all whenever they're hating on the schooling system, and I actually don't think it's all that bad. Let me explain. You might be wondering who I am. My name is MoisesNovaAd. I am an 18-year-old who started his first business venture at 17, and now I'm just documenting my way to the top. It's not as horrible as some people claim it is to be. The school system does absolutely fucking suck. I know I'm kind of countering myself on this, and is in my opinion one of the worst systems they could have implemented. They could have used the Roman system, but instead they decided to use the Prussian system. Don't ask me why. But I feel like people blame everything on the schooling system, and they blame all of their failures on it. That is, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can do, blaming external factors. There probably isn't that much you could get out of it, but if you really, really wanted to, you could probably get something out of it, like discipline, meet some friends, teachers, anything. Like, with the proper mentality, you can adopt something from the schooling system. Don't get me wrong, I still disagree with this schooling system. I do still think it sucks, but I feel like it's just not as bad as some people set it out to be. It teaches discipline. The simple fact of waking up and going to school within itself is discipline. The act of doing something that you don't want to do is quite literally the definition of discipline. Doing something over and over and over again, even when you don't want to do it, just ignoring your emotions. So that is, in my opinion, the biggest takeaway that you can have from school. If you go to school thinking that you're getting nothing from it, just think, at least I'm going to school and getting discipline. The schooling system overall teaches primarily theory and things that you can't really take into account into the real world, but something that you can take into the real world and you can apply it to basically anything in life, especially if you want to be successful, is discipline. Doing homework is discipline, showering before school is discipline, changing before school is discipline, coming home and doing your homework and just doing your chores is discipline. So there's so many things that go into school that require discipline, so just keep that in mind.
Schools are organized spaces purposed for teaching and learning.
The schooling system was primarily made to create employees, which is something that a lot of you probably know. John D. Rockefeller in, I believe, the 1700s, don't quote me on that, I'm not too sure when it was, but he was essentially growing his oil empire, and he had too much demand and he had too much work, and he basically didn't have enough people in his workforce to kind of be able to catch up with all the demand he had. The supply and demand chain for his business was all out of whack, so he decided to adopt the Prussian schooling system, and he decided to reform how it is that people were taught and how it is that people were essentially being brought up within the schooling system. The Prussian schooling system was basically a mix of Russia, Germany, and Poland, and they had their own schooling system because the schooling system that was being used before that was a lot more Roman-like, and the Roman schooling system was a lot better because they would essentially have mentors and they would teach things and fundamentals that were just a lot better than the Prussians did. But the Prussians wanted to indoctrinate their people to be more obedient and to follow the rules of the government. With that being said, no, Jimmy, most F students do not become super successful. When I was in school, I always heard these F students and these drug addicts and these kids who you could tell had nothing going for them constantly saying that they didn't care about school because they realized that they didn't need school to become successful. But that doesn't mean that you don't need to be smart to become successful. They would always use the argument that Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and all these super successful people dropped out of school. The only reason that they dropped out of school was because their idea that they had came up with was already seeing some fruition, and not only that, they dropped out of some of the best and most prestigious schools in the entire world. So it's not like they dropped out of their local community college, which, by the way, Mr. Beast dropped out of his community college and he's a multi-billionaire. In general, the people who have that mentality, who don't try in school and who don't really try in anything outside of school either, they still have that mentality that they can still become successful, which by all means they can, but for the most part, the habits and the things that they're doing don't reflect them wanting to become successful. They end up blaming school because of their failures when they end up working at a fast food restaurant or end up working in the mines or doing whatever it is that they end up doing because they didn't prepare themselves with the proper skill set and the proper fundamentals, because those things are what you need to become successful. If you want to become successful, it's literally just stacking disciplines and stacking skills on top of each other to actually see success. I think school can be improved in multiple ways. Firstly, let kids be more creative and don't indoctrinate them to basically see that there's only one way to solve a problem, when in reality there's tons of ways to solve problems. When I was in school, my teachers always put a problem on the board and they always only showed us one way to solve that problem. But now, after starting my business and after basically going into the real world, I now realize that there is tons of ways to solve problems and there isn't just one way to solve a problem. Same thing with making money. There's tons of ways of making money and there's more ways of losing it, but you get what I'm trying to say. The second thing is change the grading system. I hate the A, B, C, D, E, F, G entire grading system. I don't really have an alternate for it, but I feel like it can be revamped and just overall improved. The third thing is teach skills that can further help these kids in the real world, and not only just teaching them theory, which is is something that college is heavily emphasis on, just teaching kids theory. Like for business, they teach SWOT, market analysis. Basically, they are applicable into the business world, but it isn't going to be the thing that moves the needle the most, when the things that move the needle the most are essentially your network, actually having a good product, what it is that the market wants for that product. Certain things are applicable, but just overall, I feel like they could be changed. In my opinion, one of the biggest upsides to school was how easy it was to build relationships in school. In the real world, it is not a lot harder, but it definitely is a bit harder to build relationships, especially with females, at least from my perspective. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, I actually made a video on if girls help you with business or if they hold you back. So I would actually recommend for you to check this video out, or don't. I don't really care. Peace.